What do you do when you're the one who's hurt someone you love? That question can haunt you, echoing long after the moment has passed. Today, we're not offering a quick fix, but an honest look inward at the guilt, the regret, and the first steps toward healing yourself before you can repair anything else. To truly heal, we have to go deeper than guilt. We have to face the parts of ourselves we'd rather ignore. This is shadow work, confronting the hidden, uncomfortable sides of ourselves, not to excuse our actions, but to understand and integrate them so we can change for real. Hurting someone you love can shatter your self-image, making you question who you really are. But what if that painful action wasn't a fluke, but a part of you you've never faced, one that needs your attention, not your denial? After the shock fades, the question, "Why did I do this?" can consume you, shaking your trust in yourself. But this painful self-interrogation is the first step toward real self-awareness and understanding the hidden forces that drove your actions. Your regret is an invitation to look inward, to meet the wounded parts of yourself that acted out. Instead of asking, "How could I be so terrible?" ask, "What part of me was crying out for help?" That's where true healing begins. Carl Jung called our hidden denied traits the shadow, the parts of ourselves we push into darkness to fit in. Shadow work isn't about erasing these parts, but bringing them into the light so we can become whole and truly change. While it's easy to conceptualize the shadow as a container for all our negative qualities, Carl Jung's theory is far more nuanced and profound. The shadow is not exclusively made up of our faults and vices. It's simply the home of everything we have disowned about ourselves. This means it also contains a wealth of positive potential, hidden strengths, and untapped creativity that we may have repressed for various reasons. Perhaps as a child, your natural assertiveness was labeled as bossy, so you pushed it into the shadow. Your creative spirit might have been dismissed as daydreaming, causing you to abandon it in favor of more practical pursuits. Therefore, the shadow is a complex and paradoxical mixture. Alongside our jealousy and rage, it might hold our capacity for healthy aggression and righteous anger, which are necessary for setting boundaries. Alongside our fear, it might conceal our deep vulnerability and capacity for profound connection, which we may have suppressed to avoid getting hurt. It's the storehouse for our unmet needs, our unhealed childhood wounds, and the raw, untamed parts of our life force. It's the wild, spontaneous, and authentic part of ourselves that we may have sacrificed in order to be seen as good, polite, or successful in the eyes of others. Engaging in shadow work, then, is not just about confronting our demons, it's also about reclaiming our lost treasures. It's a process of psychological archaeology, carefully digging into the soil of our unconscious to uncover the valuable artifacts we buried long ago. By integrating these lost parts, we become more whole, more authentic, and more powerful. Reclaiming your repressed assertiveness could empower you to stand up for yourself. Reconnecting with your hidden creativity could bring new joy and meaning into your life. The shadow in this light is not just a source of shame, but a wellspring of vitality and potential. This dual nature is precisely why Jung referred to the shadow as containing gold. He believed that by courageously exploring this dark terrain, we could recover lost parts of our soul. This is a crucial reframe, especially when you're reeling from the guilt of having hurt someone you love. The action you regret may have come from a wounded, shadowy place, but the work of exploring that place is not just about preventing future harm. It's also an opportunity to recover a forgotten strength or a silenced need, leading to a more complete and resilient version of yourself that is ultimately better equipped for loving relationships. Here we arrive at the most critical aspect of Jung's theory for our discussion: the immense power the shadow wields when it remains unconscious and unexamined. Jung taught that what we fail to acknowledge and integrate within ourselves does not simply disappear. Instead, it gains autonomous power and finds ways to express itself indirectly, often with destructive consequences. The more we deny or repress our shadow, the more it controls us from the dark recesses of our psyche. It becomes a puppeteer, pulling our strings in ways we cannot comprehend, leading us to act in ways that baffle and horrify our conscious minds. One of the most common ways the unacknowledged shadow exerts its influence is through a psychological defense mechanism called projection. This is when we unconsciously take an aspect of our own shadow, a trait, feeling, or impulse we cannot accept in ourselves, and attribute it to someone else. For instance, if you have repressed your own anger, you might become hypersensitive to anger in others, judging them as aggressive and out of control. If you have denied your own insecurities, you may perceive others as arrogant and full of themselves. We essentially turn the world into a screen upon which we project our own inner darkness. Projection is a major source of interpersonal conflict and misunderstanding. It prevents us from seeing people clearly for who they are, as we are instead interacting with our own disowned parts. But the shadow's influence doesn't stop there. When it is not being projected outward, it can erupt inward or leak out sideways in our behavior. That sudden, inexplicable lashing out at a loved one, that moment you lied when the truth would have been simpler, that act of self-sabotage just when things were going well, these are often the work of the shadow, a desperate eruption of a repressed part of you that can no longer be contained. This is precisely why shadow work is not just an esoteric exercise, but a fundamental moral responsibility, especially within relationships. That moment where you hurt someone you love may very well have been a direct manifestation of your unexamined shadow. It may have come from a wounded part of you that has been buried and ignored for years, finally bursting forth in a moment of stress or vulnerability. The purpose of shadow work is not to blame the past or find excuses for the harm. It is about bringing these hidden parts into the light so they stop controlling you, so you can finally take the driver's seat of your own life. Let me pause for a moment. If you are already finding this content helpful, I would appreciate your support by liking this video, subscribing to this channel, and sharing it with anyone whom you feel could benefit. Now, back to our topic. When you have caused harm to someone you care about deeply, the first emotional wave that typically washes over you is guilt. It is essential to understand that, in its purest form, guilt is not your enemy. In fact, it is a profoundly healthy and necessary human emotion, a vital function of a well-adjusted conscience. Think of guilt as a sophisticated internal guidance system, a moral compass that is calibrated to your own personal values and principles. When you act in a way that contravenes those deeply held beliefs, when you betray your own code of ethics, the alarm of guilt sounds, letting you know that you have strayed from your path. It is a signal that demands your attention. This feeling arises specifically from the action itself. Guilt says, "I did something bad." It is focused on a specific behavior, a moment in time that you can isolate and examine. This distinction is crucial because it keeps the focus external to your core identity. The discomfort you feel is a direct response to a misstep, a recognition that your actions were out of alignment with the person you strive to be. It is a call to course correct, to acknowledge the mistake, and to consider how you might make amends for the harm that was done. It motivates you toward reparative action, like offering a sincere apology or changing your behavior in the future. This is why feeling guilt after hurting a loved one is actually a positive sign. It means you care. It signifies that your capacity for empathy is intact and that the relationship holds significant value for you. The absence of guilt would be far more concerning, suggesting a disconnect from your own moral framework or a lack of care for the other person's well-being. So the initial pang of guilt should not be immediately suppressed or pushed away. Instead, it should be seen as a messenger, delivering a crucial piece of information about a disconnect between your values and your actions, prompting a necessary period of reflection and accountability. However, the constructive potential of guilt is fragile and can easily be distorted. It is meant to be a temporary signal, not a permanent state of being. Its purpose is to alert you to a problem so that you can address it. When you are able to sit with the guilt, acknowledge the wrongdoing and take responsible steps to address it, the emotion has served its function and can begin to recede. The danger arises when this healthy, action-oriented guilt is allowed to fester and morph into something far more toxic and paralyzing, a state of being that offers no pathway toward resolution or growth, but instead pulls you deeper into the darkness. While guilt is focused on a specific action, its darker cousin, shame, takes a much more insidious and destructive turn. Shame internalizes the wrongdoing, moving beyond the specific behavior and launching a devastating attack on your fundamental sense of self. Where guilt says, "I did something bad," shame whispers a far more damning message, "I am bad." It is not about a single mistake. It is a verdict on your entire character. This shift is where the shadow begins to truly take over, feeding on the feeling of being inherently flawed, broken, or unworthy of love and belonging. Shame convinces you that the harmful act was not an aberration, but a revelation of your true, terrible nature. This is the state where healing grinds to a halt. Unlike guilt, which motivates us toward connection and repair, shame does the opposite. It is an isolating emotion that thrives in secrecy and silence. It tells you to hide, to pull away from others, and to conceal the part of yourself that you believe is so deeply flawed. You might start telling yourself stories that reinforce this feeling of worthlessness, such as, "You're completely broken beyond repair," or "You are not worthy of anyone's love or forgiveness," or the most hopeless of all, "You'll never, ever be able to change." These narratives become a self-fulfilling prophecy, trapping you in a cycle of self-loathing. When shame takes root, the focus is no longer on the person you hurt, but entirely on your own perceived inadequacy. It becomes a form of intense self-absorption, a painful prison where you are both the inmate and the guard. In this state, it is nearly impossible to offer a genuine, heartfelt apology because your energy is consumed by managing the overwhelming feeling of being exposed as a bad person. The potential for growth is stifled because shame tells you that you are fundamentally incapable of it. It freezes you in place, preventing the very actions that could lead to healing and reconciliation for everyone involved. This is precisely where the shadow finds its most fertile ground. Shame is the nutrient-rich soil in which our repressed negative traits flourish. The parts of ourselves we are most ashamed of, our anger, our fear, our selfishness, are the very things we push down into the shadow. When we experience an event that triggers deep shame, we are essentially confirming the shadow's darkest beliefs about ourselves. This reinforces the need to keep these parts hidden, strengthening the walls of our internal prison and giving the shadow even more power over our lives, ensuring it remains unexamined, unhealed, and poised to cause harm again in the future. Here we arrive at the crucial twist that Carl Jung's work offers. The very act of avoiding your shame is what gives it, and by extension your shadow, its immense power over you. It is a profound paradox of the human psyche. Our natural instinct when faced with the excruciating pain of shame is to run to deny it, to distract ourselves, or to numb the feeling in any way we can. We believe that if we can just ignore it for long enough, it will eventually fade away. But Jung's insight reveals that the opposite is true. What you consciously push into the shadow does not disappear, it simply gains strength in the darkness. Think of your shame as a hungry creature living in the basement of your mind. Every time you refuse to go down and face it, every time you pretend it isn't there, you're essentially sliding a plate of food under the door. Your avoidance, your denial, your repression, these are the very things that nourish it. The shame grows larger, darker, and more powerful with every attempt you make to evade it. It begins to seep through the floorboards, influencing your moods, your decisions, and your relationships in ways you don't even recognize. Your attempt to escape it only ensures that it becomes a more dominant force in your life. This dynamic explains why simply feeling bad about what you did is not enough to create lasting change. If that feeling is dominated by shame, your primary motivation will be to escape the feeling, not to learn from the experience. This avoidance is a direct refusal to engage in shadow work. It is a refusal to look at the part of you that caused the harm. By turning away, you are ensuring that this shadow aspect remains unconscious, unintegrated, and free to erupt again whenever it is triggered. You are unknowingly choosing to remain at its mercy, setting the stage for a repeat performance in the future. Therefore, the path to true transformation requires a radical act of courage. It requires you to do the one thing your shame is telling you not to do. You must turn and face it. This is the core of shadow work in this context. It means consciously choosing to sit with the discomfort of your shame without judgment. It means looking directly at the part of you that acted out and asking it questions with curiosity instead of condemnation. This is where the real healing happens. By bringing the light of your conscious attention to the shame, you stop feeding it. You begin to reclaim your power, transforming the shadow from a terrifying monster into an integrated part of your whole human self. So how do you actually begin the process of shadow work, especially when you are in the raw and painful aftermath of hurting someone you love? It can feel like standing at the edge of a dark, unfamiliar forest with no clear path forward. The journey does not begin with complex psychological theories or grand gestures of apology. It starts with something much quieter, more internal, and profoundly courageous. It starts with a commitment to radical honesty. This is not just about being honest about what you did, which is the first step of accountability. This is about being brutally, unflinchingly honest about why you did it, which is the first step of healing. This kind of honesty requires you to move past the surface-level excuses and justifications that your ego so readily supplies. It demands that you ask yourself a series of deep, often uncomfortable questions, and be willing to listen to the answers without judgment. The first and most vital question to explore is this: what part of me was triggered in that moment? This question shifts the focus from the external event to your internal reaction. It acknowledges that the situation itself was merely a catalyst, and the true source of the destructive behavior resided within you, waiting for the right conditions to emerge from the darkness. From there, you can begin to dig deeper into the layers of your own psyche. Ask yourself, what deep-seated fear was I trying to avoid in that moment? Often our most harmful actions are not born from malice, but from a desperate primal attempt to protect ourselves from a perceived threat. Were you afraid of being abandoned? Were you terrified of appearing weak or vulnerable? Were you trying to avoid feeling insignificant or disrespected? Identifying the underlying fear is like finding the root of a persistent weed. It allows you to understand the source of the problem instead of just dealing with the surface-level symptoms of your behavior. This line of inquiry leads to an even more profound question. What old story or unhealed wound came up for me? Our reactions in the present are very often echoes of our past. Maybe your explosive anger was a direct echo of the neglect you experienced in childhood, a desperate cry from a part of you that vowed to never be overlooked again. Perhaps your dishonesty stemmed from a deep-seated fear of rejection, a pattern you learned was necessary for survival. These revelations do not excuse the harm you caused, but they provide a crucial context. They explain it. And this deep, compassionate understanding is the essential gateway to lasting healing and change. Engaging in this level of radical honesty and self-inquiry is not an abstract concept. It is a practice that can be supported by tangible tools and techniques. These methods provide a structure for your exploration, creating a safe container for you to engage with the difficult emotions and memories that will inevitably arise. One of the most powerful and accessible tools for shadow work is journaling. This is not simply about recounting the day's events. It is about using the written word as a tool for emotional excavation, a way to have a direct conversation with the deepest parts of yourself. Start with a specific, potent prompt. What am I most ashamed of about that moment? Writing the answer to this question allows you to externalize the shame, to get it out of the chaotic echo chamber of your mind and onto the page where you can look at it more objectively. Don't censor yourself. Write down every raw, ugly, and uncomfortable thought that comes up. Follow that thread of shame to its source. Ask your journal, where have I felt this feeling before in my life? This practice can help you connect the dots between your present-day reaction and its older, deeper roots. The journal becomes a sacred space where your shadow can speak and you can listen without interruption, uncovering patterns you never knew existed. Another potent practice is known as mirror work. This technique can feel intensely vulnerable, but its effects are profound. Stand in front of a mirror, look directly into your own eyes, and try to see past the person you present to the world every day. Try to see the wounded parts, the fear, the shame. Then speaking aloud, offer yourself the compassion you so desperately need. You can say, I see the part of you that was scared. I see the part of you that messed up. And then you offer the most healing phrase of all. Even this part of me is worthy of love and compassion. Repeating this practice helps to rewire the neural pathways of self-criticism and builds a foundation of internal safety. Meditation is also an invaluable tool for meeting your shadow. Instead of trying to clear your mind, you can use a guided visualization to actively engage with the hidden parts of yourself. Find a quiet space, close your eyes, and visualize the you who caused the harm. Don't push this version of yourself away. Instead, invite them to sit with you. See them clearly, without judgment. Then, with an open heart, ask them a simple question. What were you trying to protect? Or what did you need in that moment that you didn't get? Listen for the answer. This is not about condoning the behavior. It is about understanding the motivation behind it. This is deep, emotional work. It is an excavation of the soul, and it takes immense guts. As you begin to use these tools to uncover the roots of your behavior, it's crucial to adopt the right mindset for this delicate work. The process of shadow work isn't some kind of aggressive interrogation or a forceful exorcism of your demons. Instead, it's a gentle and compassionate art. It's really the practice of sitting with the parts of yourself that you've spent a lifetime running from. This actually requires immense patience, a willingness to be with discomfort, and a commitment to treating yourself with the same kindness you'd offer to, say, a frightened child. Remember, the shadow isn't a monster to be slain. It's a wounded part of you that's crying out for attention and healing. When you uncover a difficult truth, for example, realizing that your lashing out was deep down, driven by a feeling of inadequacy, your first instinct might honestly be to recoil in shame or to judge yourself harshly. But this is the moment to, consciously choose a different path. Instead of saying, "That's so pathetic," try saying, "Ah, there it is. The part of me that feels it is not good enough. I see you." This simple act of acknowledgement, free from judgment, is actually profoundly healing. It sends a message to your psyche that all parts of you are welcome, that nothing needs to be hidden in the dark anymore. This acceptance over time is what begins to dissolve the shame. This process isn't about finding a quick fix or an immediate resolution. The wounds that live in your shadow were often created over many years, and honestly, integrating them will also take time. There will be days when the work feels empowering and illuminating, and there will be days when it feels heavy and exhausting. It's essential to be gentle with yourself, to allow for rest, and to celebrate the small victories. Every moment that you choose curiosity over condemnation, every time you meet your own pain with compassion instead of criticism, you are, in fact, actively rewiring your brain and healing your soul. This isn't a race to a finish line. It's a lifelong practice of becoming more whole. Ultimately, this gentle art of sitting with your shadow is an act of profound self-love. It's the most sincere apology you can make, not just to the person you hurt, but to yourself. By committing to this inner work, you are saying, "I care enough about myself and about the people I love to do what it takes to understand my own darkness so that I no longer unconsciously inflict it on the world." This is the foundation of true change. It's from this place of integrated self-awareness and deep compassion that you can begin to move forward, not as a perfect person, but as a more conscious, whole, and trustworthy one. It's a pretty common misconception that the deep, introspective journey of shadow work is just a purely internal affair, a private excavation of the soul that, stays separate from the outside world. A lot of people believe the goal is simply to arrive at a place of personal understanding and self-acceptance. However, Carl Jung, who really shaped this whole concept, was adamant that insight without action is incomplete. The true purpose of shadow work isn't just awareness, it's integration. This means you must consciously take the profound insights you've gained from your inner exploration and bring them back into the light of day, applying them to your life and your relationships in a tangible, meaningful way. True growth, therefore, is a two-part equation. The first part is the compassionate self-inquiry we've been exploring, the courageous work of facing your shadow. But the second, equally crucial part, is accountability. This is, honestly, where the rubber meets the road. It means taking full, unreserved responsibility for the impact of your actions, without hiding behind the newfound understanding of your triggers or wounds. Your past pain may provide an explanation for why you acted as you did, but it never serves as an excuse for the hurt you have caused. Integration requires you to hold both truths at the same time: compassion for your own wounds and responsibility for the wounds you inflicted on another. This synthesis of accountability and compassion is really the very engine of genuine transformation. It prevents you from getting stuck in one of two unproductive extremes. Without compassion, accountability can easily curdle into self-hatred and shame, a cycle of punishment that offers no path forward. You just end up berating yourself for your flaws without understanding their origins, making it likely you'll repeat the same mistakes. On the other hand, without accountability, compassion can morph into self-indulgent excuse-making, where you use your past wounds as a get-out-of-jail-free card, absolving yourself of any need to change. True growth lives in the delicate, powerful balance between the two. This integrated approach means you must be willing to walk back into the mess you created, but this time, you do so with a newfound clarity and integrity. You're no longer operating from a place of shame-fueled defensiveness or ignorant confusion. Instead, you can approach the person you hurt with a grounded understanding of yourself. You can own your behavior without collapsing into self-loathing. This isn't about seeking immediate forgiveness or trying to manage their reaction. It's about showing up with the humble, honest truth of your own inner work, demonstrating through your actions that you are committed to becoming a safer, more conscious person for them and for yourself. When you are ready to bridge the gap between your inner work and your outer world, the apology you offer will be honestly, fundamentally different from one that comes from a place of simple guilt or shame. An apology born from integrated shadow work isn't a frantic attempt to smooth things over or escape the discomfort of the other person's anger or pain. It is a sincere, grounded act of bearing witness to the harm you caused. It's an apology that is rooted in the deep, personal work you've done to understand the source of your behavior, and it carries the weight of that profound self-awareness, which makes it an apology of true integrity. The anatomy of such an apology is built on a foundation of sincerity and clarity. It begins with a direct and unambiguous acknowledgement of your actions and their impact, without any deflections or justifications. It sounds like, "I did something that deeply hurt you. I see that now, and I'm so sorry for the pain I caused." Notice the absence of the word "but." There is no, "I'm sorry but I was stressed," or "I'm sorry but you also." A true amends is about taking full ownership of your side of the street, without trying to point fingers or minimize the consequences of your behavior. It is about creating a safe space for the other person's feelings to be heard and validated. The next component of an apology with integrity involves sharing a glimpse of your inner work, not as an excuse, but as a commitment to change. This is where your shadow work becomes a gift to the relationship. You might say something like, "I have been doing a lot of work to understand where that reaction came from, and I've realized it was connected to a deep fear of mine. I'm sharing this not to excuse what I did, but so you know that I am taking this seriously and doing the work to make sure it never happens again." This demonstrates that you are not just sorry, but that you are actively taking responsibility for your own healing and growth to prevent future harm. Ultimately, the most powerful part of an apology is the changed behavior that follows. Words are important, but honestly, they are hollow without the consistent action to back them up. True growth is not a one-time event. It's a continuous process of showing up differently. It's about demonstrating over time that you are integrating the lessons from your shadow. It's about not hiding from the mess, but having the courage to walk through it with integrity, patience, and a humble commitment to becoming a person who is worthy of trust. This is the difficult but beautiful work of turning a painful mistake into a catalyst for profound and lasting change. At this point in the journey, it is absolutely critical that we draw a firm and clear distinction, because the concept of self-compassion is often deeply misunderstood, especially in the context of having caused harm. Let's be perfectly clear about what self-compassion is not. Self-compassion is not the same thing as self-excusing. It is not a psychological loophole or a spiritual bypass that allows you to evade responsibility for your actions. It is not a soft, permissive voice that pats you on the head and says, "Oh well, you messed up. No big deal. Let's just forget about it and move on." This is a gross distortion of a powerful and demanding practice. True self-compassion does not ignore the truth. It walks directly toward it. It is the practice of looking at the full, unvarnished reality of your actions, including the pain and damage they caused, and choosing to meet that reality with kindness rather than with self-flagellation. It is the conscious decision to treat yourself as you would a dear friend who has made a terrible mistake, with honesty, with support, and with a firm belief in their capacity to learn and grow from the experience. It is a radical stance that rejects the idea that punishment, whether from others or from ourselves, is an effective catalyst for positive change. The core statement of self-compassion in this situation is not one of dismissal, but one of profound acknowledgement and commitment. It sounds something like this: "I see what I did. I see that it hurt someone I love, and that reality is deeply painful. And I am choosing to meet this painful truth with love, not with punishment, because I know that punishment only creates more shame and fear. Compassion, on the other hand, creates the safety and resilience I need to actually change. It is a strategic choice to foster the internal conditions necessary for genuine growth, rather than getting stuck in a toxic cycle of self-recrimination. Therefore, embracing self-compassion is in many ways a more demanding path than simply wallowing in guilt. It requires you to hold the tension of two seemingly opposing truths at the same time: the fact that you did something wrong, and the fact that you are still worthy of care and kindness. It refuses to let you off the hook by allowing you to escape into the simple black and white narrative of being a bad person. Instead, it insists that you stay present with the complexity of the situation and engage with it from a place of strength, clarity, and a deep desire to heal. When you cause harm and then abandon yourself to the harsh wilderness of shame and self-hatred, you are effectively compounding the damage. You are not only dealing with the initial wound you inflicted on your loved one, but you are now adding a second self-inflicted wound on top of it. This act of self-abandonment is the very opposite of accountability. By drowning in shame, you become so consumed with your own perceived awfulness that you are rendered incapable of being truly present for the person you hurt, or for the difficult work of repair. You become the center of the drama, and your pain eclipses theirs, which is a subtle form of selfishness. True, meaningful accountability requires something far more difficult. It requires that you stay present with yourself through the entire uncomfortable process. This means staying present with the parts of yourself that you most want to run away from. The part that was cruel, the part that was dishonest, the part that was afraid. Self-compassion is the tool that makes this possible. It is the steady, reassuring hand on your own back that gives you the courage not to turn away. It is the inner resource that allows you to look at your shadow without collapsing, enabling you to learn its lessons and integrate its wisdom. Think of it this way. A child who has misbehaved does not learn to do better by being locked in a room and shamed. They learn by having a loving caregiver sit down with them, explain what they did wrong, validate their feelings, and help them understand how to make a better choice next time. Self-compassion is you choosing to become that loving, firm, and wise caregiver for yourself. It is the practice of parenting your own wounded inner parts with the goal of rehabilitation, not punishment. This approach is what actually builds the internal security needed to face your mistakes head-on and take genuine responsibility. This is why self-compassion is not letting yourself off the hook. It is the very thing that keeps you on the hook in the most constructive way possible. It keeps you engaged in the process of growth. It fuels your resilience, allowing you to get back up after a setback and continue the difficult work of changing your patterns. It is the deep, internal belief that you are capable of becoming a better, more whole person, and that you are worthy of the effort it will take to get there. It is the most potent force for transformation you have, turning the poison of regret into the medicine of self-awareness and lasting change. After all the deep, courageous inner work, the shadow exploration, the sincere apologies, the commitment to change, you may arrive at a reality that is incredibly difficult to face. Sometimes, no matter how much genuine remorse you express, no matter how profoundly you regret your actions, the person you hurt will not, or simply cannot, offer you their forgiveness. This is a painful and humbling truth to accept. It can feel like a final, devastating rejection, a closing of a door that you desperately hoped would remain open. Your desire for reconciliation, for a return to how things were, may be a powerful force driving you, but their forgiveness is not, and can never be, yours to demand or expect. It is in this moment that your growth and integrity are put to their most significant test. The other person's decision to withhold forgiveness is their boundary. It is their right, their choice, and their own path to healing, which may not include you in the way you wish. To honor their boundary is the highest form of respect you can offer them now. It means accepting their decision without manipulation, without pressure, and without making their choice about your own need for closure. It is a painful but necessary act of letting go of your desired outcome and honoring their reality, even when it is not the reality you wanted for yourself or for the relationship. This is where your shadow work provides a crucial anchor in a storm of disappointment. The inner strength you have cultivated allows you to absorb this pain without collapsing into old, destructive patterns. An unexamined shadow might react with anger, defensiveness, or victimhood, lashing out with thoughts like, "After all I've done to make it right, they still won't forgive me." But the integrated self, the self that has faced its own darkness with compassion, can understand that their boundary is not a punishment, but a form of self-preservation for them. It is their way of feeling safe, and you must respect that above all else. True accountability means accepting all the consequences of your actions, and one of those consequences might be the permanent alteration or end of the relationship. It is a harsh lesson in the reality that some things, once broken, cannot be perfectly mended. Honoring their boundary is the final, most difficult act of your apology. It is a silent acknowledgement that says, "I respect your needs more than my own desire for absolution." This act of acceptance, as painful as it is a testament to the depth of your transformation and your commitment to causing no further harm, even to get what you want. The absence of another person's forgiveness creates a profound challenge, but it also presents a powerful opportunity. It forces you to confront the ultimate question of this entire journey. Can you learn to forgive yourself even when they do not? This is where your shadow work becomes your most precious and powerful asset. It is the bedrock upon which your own self-forgiveness must be built. Because you have done the work to understand the roots of your actions, to integrate the lessons, and to commit to a new way of being, you have earned the right to find peace within your own heart, independent of any external validation or absolution. This is not about dismissing their feelings or pretending their lack of forgiveness doesn't hurt. It will. But it is about recognizing that your journey toward wholeness cannot be held hostage by someone else's process. You must learn to be your own source of grace. This is the moment to shift your focus from the questions of the past to the questions of the future. Instead of dwelling on what is lost, you can begin to ask, how do I choose to live differently now, knowing what I know? And what kind of person do I want to become as a result of this painful experience? This is the point where you transform regret into wisdom. You can make a solemn vow to yourself that the pain of this experience will not be wasted. You can decide that this will be the catalyst that ensures you never act from that wounded, shadowy place again. Your life moving forward becomes the living testament to your remorse and your growth. You make peace with yourself not by forgetting what you did, but by integrating the lesson so deeply that it fundamentally changes you for the better. Your self-forgiveness is not a single event, but an ongoing commitment to living with greater awareness, humility, and compassion. This, ultimately, is not about moving on from the pain, as if it never happened. That would be a form of denial. Instead, it is about moving forward with the pain, transformed into wisdom. It is about carrying the scar not as a mark of shame, but as a reminder of the profound lesson you have learned about yourself and your capacity for both harm and healing. Finding peace with yourself, even in the face of another's unforgiveness, is the final, most potent act of taking responsibility for your own soul. It is the ultimate integration of your shadow and the truest path to a whole and authentic life. We have journeyed through the difficult landscapes of guilt, shame, and the deep pain that comes from hurting someone we love. We've explored the hidden corners of the psyche, guided by the profound wisdom of Carl Jung. As we draw our exploration to a close, we arrive at the ultimate purpose of this challenging inner work. It is about the alchemy of turning the leaden weight of our deepest regrets into the golden wisdom of true responsibility. It is about understanding that the pain you have experienced, both in causing harm and in facing your own flaws, does not have to be a dead end. It can, if you let it, become the very portal to a more honest, a more whole, and a more deeply integrated version of yourself. The final reflections from your journey inward culminate in a powerful quote from Jung himself, which serves as both a warning and a promise. He once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate." This single sentence encapsulates the entire purpose of shadow work. It means that if you refuse to look at the hidden reasons behind your harmful actions, if you do not have the courage to face your own shadow, you are destined to remain its puppet. You will find yourself repeating the same destructive patterns, caught in a loop that feels like destiny, but is, in reality, a choice to remain unaware of your own inner workings. What does this profound statement mean in the specific context of hurting a loved one? It means that if you fail to understand the deep unconscious fear or wound that drove you to lash out, to betray, or to withdraw, you will inevitably do it again. It may not be with the same person, and it may not be in the exact same way, but the underlying pattern will persist. The unhealed wound will continue to seek expression, directing your life from the shadows. You might find yourself in a new relationship, years later, reacting with the same irrational anger, and you will call it a tragic fate, never realizing it was the same old shadow playing out its script. This is why this work is so vitally important. It is your opportunity to break the cycle and take back control of your own narrative. Let the sharp sting of your regret become your most potent and compassionate teacher, guiding you toward the parts of yourself that need healing. Allow the heavy burden of your guilt to become a compass, pointing you not toward self-hatred, but toward a deeper self-understanding. Let the agony of your pain become a sacred doorway, a portal through which you can step into a more conscious and authentic existence, no longer a victim of fate, but the conscious creator of your own character and your own life. If you're reading these words right now and you find yourself deep in that dark and lonely place of remorse, feeling the weight of your actions pressing down on you, please take a moment and allow this truth to sink in. I need you to hear this with every fiber of your being. You are not beyond redemption. The mistakes you have made do not define the totality of who you are. Your shadow, with all its messy, uncomfortable, and difficult contents, does not make you a bad person. It does not make you broken or unworthy of love. In fact, it does something far more profound and universal. It simply makes you human, a complex being of both light and darkness. The very fact that you have engaged with this difficult topic, that you are even here asking these hard questions and showing a willingness to sit with the immense discomfort of it all, is a powerful testament to your character. It tells me, and it should tell you, that you care deeply. It shows that your heart is oriented toward growth, healing, and becoming a better person. You are not running from the truth, you are turning to face it, and that is the most courageous step of all. You are already on the path toward healing, even if it feels like you are just taking the first, tentative step into an unknown wilderness. Every moment of conscious reflection is progress. Please remember to be patient with yourself. The process of earning back your own trust, and perhaps the trust of others, does not happen overnight. True, deep-seated forgiveness, especially self-forgiveness, is not a singular event, but a gradual unfolding, a slow dawn after a long night. But every single time you make the conscious choice to meet your inner world with honesty instead of denial, every time you choose growth over the stagnation of guilt, and every time you offer yourself compassion instead of condemnation, you are taking another step toward wholeness. You are actively healing the wounds within you, one moment of awareness at a time. And this is the ultimate, most beautiful gift of this entire process. Because when you commit to healing yourself, you do something remarkable. You stop the cycle of pain from being passed forward. You absorb the blow of your own shadow and transform its energy instead of unconsciously deflecting it onto others. You learn to hold your own pain, which in turn makes you a safer harbor for the people you love. That is the real gift you can offer to the world. That is how the generational and personal cycles of hurt are finally broken. It starts right here, right now with you. If you found this content helpful, I would appreciate your support by liking this video, subscribing, and sharing it with anyone whom you feel could benefit. Thank you for watching. Be and live in love and peace.